Hi, Mike Nee, Constellation Research. I'm here with Paul Pritchard, Group CEO of Overdose and a high growth agency for digital commerce. And I know, Paul, you've been thinking a lot about AI and agentic commerce. I thought it'd be a good way to just hit one of the topics we're hearing a lot about here at Google Cloud Next, which is something we're hearing a lot about as well, which is, most enterprises don't have a data or AI problem. They actually have a meaning problem. And so, the question I turn to you is, when you think about, what you've been doing in terms of campaigns, you think about commerce, when does something like semantics become real to you?
So, it's great to be here, and thanks, Mike, for the introduction. We look at our clients, and we've seen a constant challenge with them with the disparate data sources,
Yes.
right? And with those disparate data sources comes a whole bunch of confusion and a whole bunch of work that has to sit on top of it to interpret it in the right way, right? And what we've got now is we've got a semantic layer that is powered by Looker that allows us to lay the truth in a foundation that means that whatever we do on top of it is grounded. And if we've got a grounded truth, anything we do going forward is more impactful.
But when you've been doing this for a while, and so you've certainly recognized the signs. When did you realize you actually needed something like this?
I think we've always known that we had a challenge. I think only recently, in the last year and a half, have we been able to effectively resolve that challenge. And the thing that has grounded that has been the advances in technology, but more importantly, the demands from merchants to see things in real time and to be able to act in real time.
I think we've all been dealing with the shift in consumer expectations, and that has really been pushing the envelope a bit here. Can you talk a little bit about what you had to change? Like, what was some of the technology you had to bring to bear, and what did you have to change in your approach to commerce with Looker?
With Looker, it gave us the ability to move faster. We didn't have anything that we could really use before that. We had dashboards, we had BI tools, but all of those required lots of people to be able to do lots of intelligent things on top of them. Now, what we can do with small teams is build out an instance that ingests data through BigQuery into a semantic layer. The price point is really achievable for most of the businesses that we work with in the SME landscape. But more importantly, it gives them the ability to take an insight and act on it quickly. And that semantic layer to consolidate all of that data into one truth is the magic that we haven't been able to have for a long, long time.
Well, I think you hit one of the key points that we always see. They turn to more reports, more dashboards, right? And you turned about coming back to a common definition. Like, how do we get to meaning? Can you talk about how that changed, how people go to market? How you went to market with this? And what are the practices in your business?
Going to market with this has been natural because we always were challenged by our clients from a CFO point of view, a board point of view, marketing manager's point of view, and all of those points of view had a slightly different perspective on what was important to the business. The ability to now sit down with a client of ours and understand what the imperative metrics are in their business, things like profit, things like the effective kind of movement of stock, and things like customer acquisition that turns into customer lifetime value. Those are the important metrics. So the ability for Looker to consolidate that to that truth and then to give our teams and our clients' teams the same information at the same time, focused on the same metrics, has been so impactful.
Well, how did that change their practice? I mean, let's talk about pragmatically. How did that change their process? How did they use that to actually grow the business?
So from our process point of view, we used to spend a month building up to a dashboard that we would then present at the end of the month, right? And
so
you
true.
And you can imagine.
And that's fast.
Yeah, but you can imagine what you're doing at that stage, right? You're looking back on the performance of that month and you're comparing it year on year. What we now have is the ability to do that in real time, so no one's waiting for anything. What they can now do is they can build out an action-oriented plan based on real-time analytics. And those insights that you generate from that can be turned into action using generative AI, using analysts that are literally in your back pocket today. And the best thing that can come out of that is that our merchants can move faster to engage with their customers.
Do you have a good example of where you've been able to use Gen AI to then use that to turn around the experience a bit?
So we've built a tool that takes the power of Looker and the semantic layer,
Right.
and the insights that can be generated from that. And that tool now has an autonomous action that can take an insight, build a creative brief, and then turn it into creative assets that can be published by ad channels. And then that Looker channel then consistently tracks performance to ensure that when we're ready, we can create new assets.
Right, and I think we were talking about this before. That really multiplied the ability to get to really much more segmented channels, channel specific that you want to get to, and by audience specific as well. Although, let me turn that around one more time, which is, we've been hearing a lot about one of the biggest problems, not just the technology, and sure, data is always a challenge. How did this change anything in terms of people or process, in terms of the enablement that was needed? Because that old rollout seems to be one of the biggest things that people are still struggling with.
I think anyone talks about AI and they talk about the impact on people.
Right.
From our perspective, this has enabled our people to be much more intelligent and act much faster. So instead of thinking about the reduction that everyone talks about, we think about the empowerment that it brings to our teams. And so now our teams are talking to our clients about impactful metrics rather than thinking about operational tool sets.
Well, we see the same thing. When you really start executing on these things, you start seeing the expansion of where the revenue opportunities are, and just means more people to manage the multiplication of what these agents are doing for you. Well, let's turn that around to you. You've seen them, more than a couple of these. Yourself has been right hands-on. Like, what are the numbers? What's the metrics that the CFO you were talking about before needs to be seeing, and how does that translate to the bottom line?
The reality of any business, whether it's our business or our client's business, is focused on how do we protect margin.
Right.
So if you're spending money on producing products, or you're spending money on investing in talent, you have to get a return on that. And if you're not focused on the margin management within your business, then you are only focused on the vanity metrics, such as clicks and revenue.
Too true.
So our business now has been more profitable because what we've done is we've enabled our people to be smarter and to act with more value-oriented action towards our clients. And so we can do more with less, but most importantly, that more that we do delivers value.
All right, so we've heard about the changes on technology, we've heard about the changes on the organization, as well as how does it drop to bottom line. Is there one thing that you've learned that you think that data leaders, commerce leaders have to really know before they start embarking on this journey?
So I think the challenge that most leaders have at the moment is either a paralysis about where to start,
Okay.
or the inability to make the most of the partnerships that you have out there. So we've gained a lot of value working with Google and the GCP team, and they lean in really hard on what we are trying to do. Where we started first, though, was at that data layer. What we knew is that disparate data source leading to inconsistent reporting and every channel claiming the sale meant that there was a fight every day to figure out what the truth was. And when you get to that truth, beyond that is absolutely exponentially beneficial to you. So start with trying to get to the truth.
Right.
And once you've got that, anything's possible.
What I love about your story is that we see where success is, which is how do I take out a process at a time and start thinking about how I can actually start augmenting that decision. And you get back to a level of focus, a level of knowing what the end-to-end process is, and therefore using what AI is good at. Let's look at the overall context, not just little pieces like vanity metrics. How do we get to the end goal and how these pieces connect to then deliver on real returns, and also the ability to get to very specific and a level of automation to more and more segments, more and more channels, and I think that's the dream of where marketers have been going to. Hey, so Paul, thank you so much. Any last words?
Yeah, I guess my last words is a business like Overdose, an agency trying to work with lots of merchants globally. Our biggest challenge was how to create some consistent context throughout our ability to interact with those clients over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So the information that we retain over that time should be able to be used in ways to continually inform and elevate and then create some innovation for those businesses. And I think through our partnership with Google Cloud, we've been able to do that in a consistent way, and we've been able to elevate that into action that is now generating more revenue, more margin, and more customer acquisition for our merchants.
Well, I love it. It's when I think about these AI native agencies, those who are actually starting to capture some of their business know-how, and the context now becomes part of their IP, and a flywheel where the more you do, the more your own contexts get better and better over time, and that comes through all your clients that you work with. Hey, Paul, this was a great story.
Appreciate
All
it,
right?
Mike.
Hey, take it easy.
Thank you.